Okay, so have you ever heard a wolf howl in real life?
Can't say I have.
Yeah, me neither, but like
Yeah.
even in movies it's like chills,
Oh,
right?
totally. It's primal, like something deep in our DNA still recognizes it.
Exactly. And to think that sound, that howl, almost vanished forever in North America.
It's a thought, isn't it?
Our listeners wanted to understand why wolves matter so much. So today's deep dive is all about that. We're going into the book Surviving the Wild, the story of wolves in North America.
A classic. I actually reread it in preparation. Such a powerful reminder of the interconnectedness of everything.
Right. I went in thinking, okay, wolves, they're like big dogs, top of the food chain, but there's so much more to it.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's not just about their size, although, I mean, did you know a male gray wolf can weigh as much as a grown person?
Seriously.
That's
That's incredible.
Yeah, it's not just for show, though. Being at the top, their presence or lack of it, it's like a domino effect on everything
It's
else.
like that whole thing with Yellowstone, right? The book mentioned that.
Yeah, Yellowstone National Park is a prime example of what happens when you remove an apex predator from an ecosystem.
What happened? The elk just took over, right?
It was more intense than just taking over. No wolves to keep them in check. The elk numbers exploded. They overgrazed everything, like to the point it was messing up the rivers even.
Whoa, seriously, I didn't realize it was that connected.
Oh, yeah. Stream banks eroded. Some songbird populations plummeted because the trees they needed were gone. It even changed the course of some rivers.
So wolves are like the, what's the word? Like the conductors of the ecosystem, keeping it all in tune.
Exactly. Ecologists call it a trophic cascade. Imagine like a waterfall, right? But instead of water, it's energy and influence flowing down through the food web. Wolves are at the very top. Their presence or absence, it triggers this whole chain reaction.
So much for those old stories about wolves being mindless killing machines, huh?
Yeah, the book really dismantles a lot of those myths. Wolves are incredibly strategic hunters. It's all very calculated, very nuanced. And honestly, their impact on prey populations is often beneficial in the long run.
Okay, now I gotta ask, what's compensatory predation? The book mentioned it, and it sounds kinda intense.
It's fascinating, actually. Wolves often target the weaker individuals in a prey population. So the young, the old, or sick animals.
Interesting. So it's like they're doing natural selection themselves.
Exactly. It's a form of natural selection that ultimately benefits the overall health of the prey population. Less disease, stronger individuals.
Wild. It's like they're running their own population control and disease prevention program. Okay, tell me more about their hunting, though. The book made it sound so coordinated, like a team effort.
They're masters of teamwork. They rely on communication, howls, obviously, but also all sorts of subtle body language. And a successful hunt, it can take days, even weeks,
Seriously.
tracking, strategizing, wearing down their prey. It's a long game.
Wow, like the Navy SEALs of the animal world or something.
Yeah.
So different from those lone wolf images you see sometimes.
Right. The pack structure is essential for their success.
Mm.
And leading that pack, you've got the alpha pair.
Oh, yeah, the book mentioned them, like the ultimate power couple.
Exactly. The alpha male and female guide the pack's movements,
Yeah.
decisions about hunting, defending their territory, even who breeds within the pack.
It's incredible how much we can learn from these animals, isn't it? I mean, their social structures, their intelligence, their role in the ecosystem. It's humbling.
Totally. And it highlights why it's so important to truly understand these complexities before we make judgments or decisions about conservation, you know?
Absolutely. Speaking of which, the book touched on how wolves were almost wiped out in North America. Pretty dark period.
It's a tragic story.
Hmm.
Sadly, it's one that repeats itself across different species and ecosystems. As humans moved west, fear and misunderstanding led to the systematic killing of wolves, and the consequences were devastating.
I mean, it's easy to judge now, but back then,
Hmm.
it was a different world, right? Still, you can't deny the impact. What happened when the wolves were nearly gone?
Well, we saw what happens when that crucial balance is disrupted.
Yeah, it's like you pull one thing out of the ecosystem and the whole thing can unravel.
Yeah, like a tapestry. That's
Yeah.
a great way to put it. And that's what happened not just in Yellowstone,
Hmm.
all over as humans expanded their reach. The book talks about overgrazing, yeah, but then that leads to less plant diversity, soil erosion.
Yeah.
It's a cascade, but in a bad way this time.
It's kind of hard to grasp how much one species' absence can mess things up. But then there's the whole human side of it, too. It's not like we can just say, oh, wolves got to eat if it's, someone's livelihood at stake. The book gets into the whole wolves versus livestock thing, and that's got to be tricky.
No, absolutely.
Mm.
You've got ranchers, they got to protect their animals, right?
Yeah.
That's how they put food on the table. But then you've got people passionate about wolves being back, and it's finding that middle ground that's tough.
So is there a good answer? Like, how do we make that work?
Well, the book talks about some solutions that seem promising. One thing is, instead of going straight to, lethal control, try to deter wolves non-lethally.
Okay, how do you do that? Scare them off or something?
Kinda. There's this thing called fladry. It's like these colorful flags they put up around pastures. Apparently, wolves are naturally kind of cautious, so the flags being unusual, it freaks them out enough to stay away.
So you're working with their instincts, not just against them. I like it.
Right. And there are other things they do. Range riders, basically cowboys on horseback, they patrol and can haze the wolves away if they get too close to livestock. And then there's guard dogs, but like specific breeds that are really good at deterring wolves.
So it's got to be like a multi-pronged approach, huh? And probably a lot of talking between like the ranchers, scientists, wolf people.
100%. It can't be us versus them. Wolves are part of the landscape. And to make it work long term, for them, and for us, you got to find that coexistence.
We're all in this together, right?
Mm-hmm.
Cliche, but true.
Exactly. But the cool thing is, it's not all doom and gloom. The book talks about this amazing example where the trophic cascade, remember that, it went in reverse thanks to conservation.
You mean when they put the wolves back in Yellowstone?
That's the one. 1995, they brought wolves down from Canada, released them into the park. It was a huge deal.
Yeah, like something out of a movie. So what happened? The elk just went, oh no, they're back.
Yeah.
And everything fixed itself.
It's a bit more complicated, but basically, yeah, elk numbers went down, obviously, which took the pressure off the plants. Aspens, willows, all those started coming back strong.
Like hitting the reset button on years of damage? That's amazing.
And it's not just the plants. Beavers loved the willows coming back. Songbirds that need those trees for nesting, they did better. Even the rivers started changing. Less erosion because the plants were holding the banks. Better for fish. Everything's connected.
That's incredible, but I'm guessing it wasn't all smooth sailing even with that, right?
You're right. The book doesn't sugarcoat it. Rewilding, it's a process, takes time. You got to keep an eye on things, adapt, sometimes make hard choices.
Finding that balance, it's like walking a tightrope, right?
Yeah, you got it. And it's never really done. The book actually talks about how even in Yellowstone, there were bumps in the road. Like livestock still got attacked sometimes, and some ranchers, they felt like nobody was listening to them.
So how'd they deal with that? Was it just like, too bad, wolves are back?
No, thankfully not. A lot of it came down to just talking to each other, They set up these programs so ranchers could get paid back if they lost livestock because of wolves. And they really worked on those non-lethal ways to keep them apart that we talked about.
Makes sense. It's got to be about building trust, finding what works for both sides. But it's encouraging, that they could bring back this animal that was almost gone and actually see good things happen. Gives you hope.
It really does. It shows what we can do when we work together, when we're willing to adjust. And honestly, it's a whole different way of looking at conservation now. Not just saving one species here and there, but understanding that it's all connected.
Like that saying, everything connected to everything else. Sounds kind of obvious, but the wolves really drive it home,
Totally. And their story, it's not over yet. Challenges, disagreements, sure, but also a chance to learn and do better. The book ends by basically saying, hey, get involved, stay informed, fight for a wilder world.
Because in the end, it's all our story, right? We're part of this big, messy, amazing web of life.
That's it. And everything we do, it ripples out. Wolves, they remind us of that, how delicately balanced nature is, how tough it can be, and how important it is that we care about it.
It's a lot to think about, in a good way. This deep dive, it's really changed how I see things. Those wolf howls, they're going to sound different to me now.
That's what it's all about, right? Stories that stick with you, make you see the world differently.
They definitely did for me. Who knows, maybe some of our listeners will be inspired to do their own wolf deep dive now.
I hope so. The more we understand about creatures like wolves, the better chance they have and the healthier our planet will be.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Yeah.
So with that, we're wrapping up this deep dive into surviving the wild. We had a blast exploring the world of wolves. Hope you did too. Until next time, keep those minds curious and never stop learning.